Well, lady and gentlemen, we made it to the top 5 of our Star Wars consensus rankings. I think we were just talking about it before we jumped in, but it's been a minute since we started. I don't remember what month it was of last year that we started these, but it was a while ago.
It was warm.
Yeah, it was warm outside still. So, but yes, we did make it. We made it to the top 5, so we're going to jump in to that. And I was going to give us a brief rundown real quick on what we have to this point, so everyone's got a point of reference for our rankings thus far. So at 29, we had The Acolyte. 28 was The Last Jedi. 27, Rise of Skywalker. 26 was Tales of the Empire. 25 was Star Wars Visions, both seasons. We didn't split that one up. 24 was Ahsoka. 23 was Obi-Wan Kenobi. 22, The Mandalorian Season 3. 21 was Bad Batch Season 3. 20 was Tales of the Jedi. 19, Book of Boba Fett. 18 was The Force Awakens. 17 was the 2003 Clone Wars animated show. 16 was Solo. 15 was Bad Batch Season 2. 14 was Bad Batch Season 1. 13 was Star Wars The Clone Wars movie from 2008. Number 12 was The Mandalorian Season 2. 11 was Mandalorian Season 1. Top 10, at 10 we had Star Wars Rebels. At 9 we had Attack of the Clones. 8 we had The Phantom Menace. Number 7 we had Andor, which would be Season 1 since obviously Season 2 is not released yet. And then at 6 we had Rogue One. So that's what we have to preface. If you can do your Star Wars math, then you can guess which ones are in the top 5, but you don't know yet which order they're in. So that's what we're going to jump into here in just a second. So without further ado, let's get to these top 5, folks. All right, number 5. I guess we get like a drum roll or something. It's going to be Star Wars The Clone Wars, the TV series. Obviously, I think we can all claim that this was our childhood because we all fall within that age bracket.
Well into my 20s.
We were in college.
This is not childhood.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
Definitely in college.
Remember, we were so much older than you.
Yeah, I forget that sometimes, but anyway, for most of us, this was our childhood, and for the rest of us, you were still children at heart when you watched this. So, or you're just hardcore Star Wars fans like all of us. So, but yeah. So, what is there bad to say about this? I'm not gonna give my opinion first, but I mean, we're in the top 5, so at this point, anything that we get is going to be top notch. So, I think we're gonna let Andrew start because he's the lowest, and we need to like shame him or something for this not being in his top 10. So, explain yourself, sir.
You ranked this under Last Jedi.
No. Last Jedi is like
I hope to
not Last Jedi, but the third.
Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah.
We've talked about that. So I guess this was one of those where there was a number that you had to choose. You know, there's just so many things to choose. It just eventually kind of fell at this number. So being ranked 12 doesn't necessarily reflect it's not a top 10 show. It's
it does.
It's out of a top 10 by 2
Absolutely
points. It's out of a top 10 by 2 points. This is essentially when your team doesn't win your homecoming game in football, but you're still good, but you just had a really bad day, so you're not a top 10 team anymore. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. I don't know. Like you said, Clone Wars is great. There's really nothing bad to say about it. It's the only criticism one could have is that it's if you're not into animation but you like Star Wars. I mean, that's about it. I can say that the Clone Wars is probably the focal point of all modern Star Wars success in all media right now. Like if you can trace all kind of successful media, all the new media back to the Clone Wars, because we really didn't have a whole lot going on to consume Star Wars. We had games. There was nothing on TV. There was no cartoons. We had the Clone Wars cartoon came out, but it was kind of like it kind of came out of the darkness out of nowhere. It was just kind of there. But this like cranked everything up. This is what brought a lot of the success, I believe, for all Star Wars things now, or at least just an interest to do more other than movies. Obviously, a lot of the internet grew up watching this, so this is kind of like this was the show. I mean, we didn't have Star Wars television shows, so like.
Well, we had Ewok Adventures.
The Ewok Adventures, yeah, that's probably number one.
That was our childhood.
That's probably number one if you really think about it. But so we didn't have a TV show to watch, so I can't imagine growing up watching Star Wars every week a new episode. That's pretty wild, actually. We were lucky enough to find a book, a new book novel to read that was Star Wars. So it's great. It's definitely long. Like the series is really long. Like there's a lot of episodes. It's not like, what is it? How animes work? It's like there's like 32 or 64 episodes.
Yeah,
and they
they'll
won't
have
make
a
any
set
more.
amount of episodes, and then that's the
Clone
end of
Wars
anime.
is not like that. I mean, they have every season has a lot of episodes, and one of our rewatches not too long ago, I remember we were like, "Dang, we're only in season 2. There's just so much." But every episode is just an individual story that doesn't necessarily have to connect to the big story, like Bad Batch or.
They're also only about 22-ish minutes long, too.
Very short, too. So there's a lot of content out there.
But it's easily digestible.
Very digestible. It's obviously for kids. And just like Rebels, I think it came out originally for a younger audience, even though it's kids. And then as it progressed, it just got darker and there's more people watching it. Like the last season of the Clone Wars is incredible. Like you don't even feel like you're watching a cartoon anymore. And so it's kind of like Rebels. Watch the first episode and then the last episode, and you're like, "Is this the same show? The same writers?" There's such a contrast. So it's interesting how the cartoons progressively get better, and the Clone Wars is where it all started. The voice actors are all top notch. I mean, just 10 out of 10 down the line. We really get to see Anakin fleshed out a little bit more than just Hayden Christensen. Same with Obi-Wan Kenobi's character. I have always told Megan that I feel like Anakin's fall to the dark side is so much more fleshed out. If you watch the Clone Wars, it makes so much more sense as opposed to I'm a moody Jedi Knight. I had a bad dream about my wife dying. And now I'm going to turn to the dark side and kill baby Jedi and all the friends that I've ever known my whole life. Like, I know you guys are going to probably have Revenge of the Sith as number one, but his fall isn't really fleshed out well. It's a part of the story, but the Clone Wars really tells the whole story for Anakin. That's why I really like the Clone Wars, because it does Anakin a good service. I can't say anything about it. It's just great. It's just wonderful. I don't know why it's not my top 10. That's just where it landed. So,
yeah, you're even mad at yourself over that. I'm like,
it is what it is.
He's like,
why did I do that?
What did you like more?
I agree. I agree with everything that he said. I was going to kind of my idea for this one for me was I was going to kind of mention a couple of the episodes. I mean, best episode, it was season 7, episode 10, The Phantom Apprentice, where Ahsoka comes back and confronts Darth Maul on Mandalore. And that to me is my favorite.
Arc is phenomenal.
Yeah. One of my favorite. Well, my favorite arc is actually the Umbara. I think that's season 4.
Season 4 is the best season.
Season 4, 8 through 12, or something like that. And then another 1 or 2 episodes that I really liked was when it didn't really have anything to do with the Jedi. Darth Maul took over Death Watch. That's season 5. And then I obviously I like the Ahsoka and Rex at the end of season 7. So I mean,
yeah,
it's hard to beat, man.
it's one of those things where it's like, and we may ask that, like, we'll just kind of go around the room maybe briefly and just say, hey, what would be your favorite arc? It'd be hard for me to give my favorite arc. There's a lot of really great
question.
Yeah, it's to me if you want to just ask me which one's the best arc, I think an argument can be made that it's the Siege of Mandalore, the final 4 episodes of the show. And I don't know that it's particularly like that controversial to say that. Whereas there's some sort of lesser ones. Like I like season 4 a lot because my favorite character is Obi-Wan, and he's heavily focused on in that season with his confrontation with Darth Maul. That whole arc is really good. The
that
arc
whole
where
season, it really from season 4 on, it's like.
But this, I mean, it's not overly complicated for me. It's like this was literally my childhood. Like me and my younger brother, we would go. This is how they used to do it. You could go on StarWars.com and stream the new episodes each week for free on their website. And so we would go up to the computer and go to the website and sit there in front of our computer and watch every new episode. And that's how we kept, because we didn't have Cartoon Network at the time. So it was like, so that's how we watched it. And so for me, this was the Star Wars that I grew up on. So there's obviously the nostalgia factor, but then there's just the fact that it's just freaking good, So it's like, for me, that's where I'm at with it. I mean, we don't have to say much about this, but I mean, it gave us one of the best original characters in Ahsoka Tano that exists in the Star Wars universe. Now, we can debate a little bit, and I'm definitely critical more of how they've handled her since Rebels, but in terms of just giving her to us as this new character and making it work so well, when she's not even mentioned in the prequel trilogy as existing, the fact that they could pull that off in the way they do it.
Right in, like, as a writer, without it becoming shoehorned and cheesy,
Right. And it's just well done. And so I like y'all were saying, there's just not a lot of bad you can say about this show. I'll give one negative that I can think of that's the most glaring negative, and that is the middle arc in the final season with the 2 sisters and Ahsoka is the single worst arc in any Clone Wars arc of any season, in my opinion. And so it's frustrating because you have the Bad Batch arc in the first 4 episodes, which is great, and then you have that arc and you're like, ugh. And then you have the really good Siege of Mandalore arc, and it's like, so it's one of those where you're like, couldn't you kept that momentum going upwards instead of like a lot of momentum first 4, then it drops way down, and then it jumps way back up here on the next one. So yeah, that's my biggest gripe is like, why did you save that? Why did you pick, when you only had 12 episodes to work with, why did you pick that story arc to go with in the final season? So
I remember us talking about that too, because we were kind of like, where are they going with this? This is all. It was kind of weird, and it slows the whole pace of the season. They're just kind of hanging out like, my sister's in crime, and Ahsoka's like, I'm kind of a Jedi. Why are you guys worried about all this stuff? It's a weird. The mood changed, and the pacing of the whole season was weird, and I didn't like that either. But I'm glad it only lasted like 2 episodes, maybe.
It was 4 episodes. They drug it out. It was a 4-episode arc. They drug it out. Yeah, no, I remember it very well.
That's a third of the whole season.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's why Johnny was so mad about it.
I would take the whole droid arc where they go into the void with all the droids. I'd take that over this.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Or the Jar Jar one where he goes to Naboo and like goofs off like.
Okay, I love the Jar Jar arc.
That's like good comedic relief instead of angsty teenager relief, which isn't even a thing.
I'm just trying to list some not as good ones and say that I'd take those over this one. So. But anyway, I'll let somebody else talk before I get more riled up about it.
I was just gonna say I don't really have much to say because I think you guys mostly just said everything I was gonna say at this point. I mean, I think it was just like really nice to be able to deep dive into so many of these side characters that we got from the prequels and yeah, I mean, like how Dooku and comes to Grievous as well, and then bringing back Darth Maul was such a great decision by them. I mean, obviously we had the Mandalore arc too, which was like probably my most favorite arc in the entire series. Also, I mean, that arc from start to end was just phenomenal. But yeah, just like deep diving into all the characters, it's so good. I mean, you just get so much like information that you didn't have before, and it's just, I don't know, just a little cherry on top. So
Yeah, I'm kind of like you. They all mostly covered what I was going to say, but I'm such a big Anakin stan that.
Fan.
No, you can say stan.
What's stan?
That's what the young people say.
Oh, I don't know.
What is that? I'm not in with the hip lingo, so I don't.
Stan.
Yeah.
I don't know, but apparently when you really like something, you're a stan. But yeah.
Them youngins in their tic tac.
Does that stand for like super fan or something?
Maybe. Honestly have no idea.
You don't even know?
I don't. I just know I'm
Okay.
using it correctly. But anyway.
from the Eminem song "Stan" because it's a super
okay.
fan.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Either way, I love
Y'all know
it.
me. I listen to a lot of Eminem, so
So I really enjoyed the fleshed out arc of him slowly going to the dark side. Because like Andrew said, when you just watch the movies, it's like all this because he had a bad dream about Padme dying during childbirth. Like, you had a dream that I died during childbirth, and you didn't kill a bunch of children.
I wasn't killing kids a few days later.
Yeah. So I really liked it that it kind of showed how he was losing faith in the Jedi Order and just seeing the gray that he wasn't supposed to acknowledge. I really just enjoyed that. Of course, love Ahsoka. She's amazing. One of the best original characters to come out of the new Star Wars. Wonderful, strong female character. Love her. It does have some problems. For me, my biggest problem sometimes was the fact that it wasn't in sequential order of time, like you jump back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
So that
does
could
get
get
a little
I'd be like,
confusing.
wait, he died. Why is he
I had
suddenly
forgotten
back?
about that. I remember that was confusing.
Mm-hmm. Like, I remember.
Well, isn't it season 1 where you get the Christophsis arc with Anakin and Obi-Wan that takes place before the movie, and it's like very confusing? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you have I think the first episode where it's Yoda with a couple of the clone troopers are going to meet up with some politician, the little flying guy. But that doesn't take place. Yeah. But that doesn't take place until season 2 or 3. So that would sometimes I would get a little confused, But yeah, I really have no complaints. I could even find a silver lining to the two annoying sisters because it showed how, as you went deeper into Coruscant, things got grosser and darker. And you could see how Coruscant, they just kept building up and up and up on themselves. So you even got to see the nasty underbelly of Coruscant. It wasn't this perfect urban utopia. So, but it still annoyed me, and I totally take it out as well. I'm just trying to find a silver lining. But all in all, Clone Wars, A+, no true complaints. Honestly, just nitpick stuff.
John, you said Ahsoka was one of the best original characters, or one of you guys said those best original characters to come out of Star Wars. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from the Clone Wars. Obviously, we have all the clones that we love, and Anakin and Obi-Wan is fantastic. But, I think Ahsoka is exactly what every single Star Wars writer and producer has wanted to create post any movie coming. I guess Revenge of the Sith would be really
George Lucas.
Or yes, post George Lucas. That's a great way to put it. They tried to do it with Rey, and that's extremely controversial. Daisy Ridley kept it from being a flop, in my opinion. They really wanted a female character that wasn't Padme or Leia to come into the scene. And I don't know if they had planned to do it with Ahsoka. I'm sure they probably had dreams for it, but what their formula worked for her. And I'm really glad to, because you really get to love her as a character. Because she's just like a kid. She's 14, I think, in episode 1. She's just a little kid.
She's probably younger than that.
She's like
12.
She's
Probably 11 or 12, yeah.
she's a kid. And
George Lucas stuck her in a tube top.
Yeah, that's kind of problematic. That's kind of problematic. But by the very end of the show, she's on this planet, or you see Vader come and find her saber and all this stuff. I mean, it's just crazy. It's such a growth, and I love shows that show growth in characters, and Ahsoka is definitely one of them. But you can't beat what they did with her, and I think she was probably the best thing to come out of it.
Yeah, well, and I think what some people forget, and this is something I had to kind of rectify at some point, was it's like people think Dave Filoni when they think Ahsoka, but who created the Clone Wars TV show? It was George Lucas. So, it was his idea, and he was, I mean, he's what made so much of the story aspect, the world building, so good. Because when Dave Filoni started on Clone Wars, he was a rookie, basically. He was a Padawan. So, everything that's good about the show is largely thanks to George Lucas, and I think a lot of people forget about that. But so I think that's worth remembering. But yeah, great show, and it's got infinite rewatchability, and so,
yeah, it does.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's jump into number 4, and it's gonna be the original Star Wars.
Ooh.
Andrew.
Ooh.
Andrew.
Ooh.
Andrew.
That's wow.
Fighting words.
Yeah, you're going first again.
Yeah, I'll just go right into it. Of course, it's a classic. I mean,
I have no words. I'm just gonna sit over here.
John's over here. I can rip this movie if you really want me to, John, and just have you sweating over there.
You can rip it, and then I'll rip you right back for.
Do it.
All right.
Do it. Fight.
All right, I'll go for it. So, as a movie, it's a great movie. I'll start with the bad and go into the good. You don't even see the main character for this movie for the first 30 minutes of the movie.
15
that's a flaw. You're in a robot. You're in a desert with 2 robots. There's and there's these little hooded children chasing people around. So for a brand new audience, that's kind of weird. I'm just saying this to make you mad. It's a classic. You can't beat it. We've probably all watched it 100,000 times. I know we completely wore out the VHS for this at my house. I mean, wore it out. And that was before they came out with the remastered VHSs that had George Lucas's extra touches and all this other stuff, and it has the THX logo going.
Jabba the Hutt was a gangster in a fur coat.
Yeah, then they actually took that out. Yeah, it's old school. I always have great memories watching this with my parents because they, during this came out in 72, 74? 77. So, post.
Can't even get the year right. God.
I know, right? Post Vietnam, apparently in the media and movies, there was a lot of negative television and news and movies out there. The anti-hero was a really big thing. Like
when The Punisher came out.
The people you saw on screen, they weren't good guys, but they were bad guys. And it just, it had this dark, grisly thing. And, with the whole political conflict of the 60s and 70s, movies and TV were very depressing, according to my dad. And he says at the very end of this movie, when all of them walk down, get the medal and the music, and John Williams is over there just tearing it up. He said when everybody, when they turned around and everybody claps, in awards and, the whole movie crescendos, he said people would stand up in the theater and cheer, like on their feet, clapping, like above their heads, like a football game. And when he talks about it, he's like, it gives me goosebumps. He said, because it was so hopeful for what was going on in that time. And it reflects even the title of the movie. So I always think about that when I watch this because, in the time that it came out, it changed the world. I mean, there's documentaries on it everywhere, how, Star Wars changed the world and it influenced technology and people wanting to become pilots, and all that sort of thing. There was even government programs called Star Wars. I mean, it's one of probably the number one most iconic, influential movies of our time. Not really our time, of all time.
Get this fun fact.
It's amazing.
When adjusted for inflation,
Oh, here
That
we go.
means if you compared ticket sales in the box office of this movie to modern like movie fees and everything,
Right.
it would have made $3.5 billion
Holy crap.
On the first week, first day, first year
total.
Gosh,
Yeah.
that's
Amazing.
nuts. Yeah, and
Nothing has
everybody was
touched
going to see
that.
it.
Yeah. Nothing's touched that.
My parents also said they would take kids because they were youth ministers at the time. They would fill up their vans and cars and take kids because everybody was like, "You got to go see this movie called Star Wars. It's amazing." And the opening crawl with the Star Destroyer coming overhead, they always said people would just like get in their seat and just there was nothing that was in cinema like it. So people were just taken aback by the visual side. And even to this day, you can start A New Hope and with that close, kind of like scalp skimming camera view. I mean, there's lasers and explosions. I mean, it comes in with no warm up. I guess the cold open really isn't very cold for this movie. The only reason I have it 21 is the only reason I have mine as 21 is because there's other Star Wars movies I like better. It's not because I dislike it. That's really what it comes down to.
But you got to dislike it a whole lot.
Nah.
You gotta like 21.
Nah.
There's only 29 on this list. So
there's other movies I like better.
Look. Are you finished? Because I'm about to go next.
Fight.
He's like, "Are you ready for this?" I mean, I don't even think bad to say about it other than it's
other than you just hate it.
It's an older movie. You can tell it's dated unless you watch all. It's been remastered about 20 times. There's stormtroopers hitting their head on doors as they walk through. I mean, like it's rough. It's a rough movie. If you really watch it objectively without John's rose-colored glasses, it's a rough movie, but it's great and it changed the world. So it's not a bad movie. And let's see, what else can I say about it?
Say something that will set John off.
I think I already have.
To get him to start a tirade.
I think I already have. What else could I say?
One more thing.
What if I just said Obi-Wan's crap? I mean, he'd probably just end the stream. Like, what if he just delete, just kicked?
I will not be baited into this.
One of my favorite things about this was it John? What's Guinness? Alec Guinness? McGinnis is the guy that plays Obi-Wan. He didn't like the role. He read the script and said it sounds like Hamlet in space. And I was like, oh my God, he's right. And he didn't want to do it, but he did. And I'm sure his great grandkids are still living off the interest that he made from it. So I'm sure he's glad he did it. But I mean, I don't have anything bad to say about it. There's other Star Wars movies I like more. What else can I say?
We just need to pull up your list of everything you ranked ahead of this and then just shame you for the next hour.
Nah.
Wait, did you rank this over or under the Book of Boba Fett?
I don't remember. Probably not. There's just other Star Wars content I like better. It's the OG one. So, I mean, I can't put it as number one because it's not my favorite. It's just that simple.
The whole Book of Boba Fett at 16.
Oh, Lord have mercy. All right. Well, anyway.
Moving on.
Forget that guy. Let's go on to the next one. No, in all seriousness, I was going to say, so going back to the box office numbers for this, this movie actually generated $775 million in 1977, like at total box office, which is
pre-inflation. That was the number.
Good, even in today's numbers. And let's do this here.
That's a ton of money.
The budget for the original Star Wars. Y'all want to know this one?
It was
$11 million.
That's like an 800% profit margin or something ridiculous.
It's a lot.
They made money. They made plenty of money.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, this is obviously not, as you can see, it's not my number one. But there's just when I saw Star Wars for the first time, my parents showed me this one, and so this was my introduction into the universe. And if anyone ever asks me which one to start with, I say you have to watch the original first.
Yeah.
Even though chronologically it's not the beginning of the story, it's still the one. Like, there's a reason it is considered one of the greatest films of all time. Mm-hmm. And so it's one of those things that it has its, like, I get there's production flaws, there's kind of goofs, but you can find those in Raiders of the Lost Ark. You can find them in all of these iconic movies, like the dude in the Raiders of the Lost Ark wearing blue jeans in the middle of the Middle East. Like there's that iconic part in that scene. So like there's always things. And I get that. I'm thinking more along the lines of the story, the characters, the world building. It were just things at the time. I mean, the only thing you could compare it to was, I don't know, about less than a decade before that, you had 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is a very dark, in terms of its tone,
and it's long,
sci-fi movie, slow and long,
very slow.
And you take this, and it's like you said, it's optimistic. It's the very definition of the hero's journey. Like when you think of it in movie making, storytelling terms, like this is the penultimate hero's journey. And it was like the thing as a 6-year-old that I'm just like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And so, we watched them on VHS because the prequels were just starting to come out, but we had to watch the originals first. And so we got them all on VCR. We watched them because VCR was still a thing when I was 6. Obviously,
you're not that young. Okay.
Nope, I'm not that young. No, I remember floppy disks and cassette tapes and VCR.
Remember 8-tracks?
Well, we don't even remember 8-tracks.
My parents had
8-tracks are a little before my time, but
yeah, they were before our time.
But yeah, no, it's one of those where anytime I watch this movie, I just get like ridiculous nostalgia and just like a feel good feeling watching it. Like anytime I see the trench run and him blowing up the Death Star, I'm just like, ah, it gets me every time. And so, it's one of those that you just can't find very many things wrong with this movie on a technical level, like on a movie making level, from the story to the characters. Like I said, everything. It's just, there's just not a lot of issues, and it's just one of those that you factor in everything else. And I mean, it's the original Star Wars, and like we said, 775 million. That's not that way for no reason. So, I give Andrew a hard time, but all in all, that's why I have it where it's at. But I'd be interested to hear everybody else's take on that.
The problem with these rankings, it's not like it's not like
you can stop digging your hole deeper. Just let
you know what I mean.
Sometimes
you have to give it a number.
There's like single digit numbers you could give it.
Nah.
I agree with everything Johnny said. So I mean, this is the start of it. You don't have. If you don't have the success that you had with this one, then you don't have any more.
Yeah.
I'm like Johnny. I grew up. This was the movie my dad sat me down and we watched. You know what I mean? Like for Star Wars. So I know, I understand the nostalgia factor is there, but I know it's not necessarily the best movie in the world. It's not. Sometimes it is hard to watch. It depends on the mood you're in, but.
It's true.
It's not true, but that's whatever,
But anyway, yeah, I agree with what it's been said so far.
Yeah, I mean, same. I'd say you kind of once again said everything I was probably gonna say. I mean, you gotta admit though, like this is.
We'll
like
let you go first next time.
No, you're good. I was just say though, like it's. I mean, your stereotypical like '70s movie though. It's very corny at times as well. So I mean, like that's just like any '70s,
right.
'80s movie. I feel like, and so like that's where it kind of can get cringy at times. But like, I mean, it's what kickstarted everything. Like this lightsabers. I mean, that's the first time we ever saw something like that. Like that was cool. I mean, that was awesome. And I mean, the story was good. I don't think it was like amazing, but it was good. Again, it's just like I think it's just more or less it's just like an old 70s movie, so it's a little corny, has cheesy at times. Same with the story, but I mean the characters are great. Chewbacca, Han Solo. I mean, probably like one of the greatest duos in Star Wars ever. I think. I mean, that can't ever go wrong with them. And I also think that honestly, this one probably had like one of the best like shots. I think in Star Wars, and that's the scene where Luke comes out of the kitchen and you just see the twin suns in the background of him just standing there, just like staring off into the distance. Like, I just think that shot is just absolutely amazing and breathtaking.
Oh, and I forgot to mention this: the score for this movie.
That too. Yeah.
Man, I don't know why I left that out. John Williams is the GOAT.
Yeah, agreed.
One of Megan's podcast people that she listens to all the time, I think I mentioned this before, but I have to again, that you're talking, it was, I called it the Last Jedi therapy group. It was like, it came out like a week or two after Last Jedi, and everyone's sitting around like, all right, let's process this. And he was comparing, contrasting this, the way this movie was laid out with other Star Wars movies. And I mentioned earlier about, you know, like in the Phantom Menace, you have Jar Jar Binks, and then you got the Phantom Menace, and then you got Duel of the Fates. You know, it's like Star Wars movies, interesting way of being really corny or just silly and just kind of rough, and then amazing. And and he I just remember he brought the twin sunsets up. You know, he was like, you got, you know, these clunky looking robots and these weird aliens, and not just every kind of a rough movie, and then you got this kid who's coming of age, hero's journey with dual sunsets, dreaming of a better life than this desert planet. And then, you know, John Williams over there just killing it. And it's in Star Wars has these moments where, you know, you may not like it, but other moments where you fall in love with it. And that's, I think, maybe one of the weird secrets of Star Wars is it's both like, you know, it's for kids, but it has corny moments, but it's not, you know, it's for adults and everybody else. But I had to bring that up because that's one of those moments early in the movie where, you know, the audience is just kind of like, you know, you're really drawn into this person, Luke Skywalker, you know?
Yeah, you took what I was going to say.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm sorry. But it's so good.
I'm going to start putting duct tape on your mouth when you're done. Well, since
Or
y'all
at least on these where he's like, you know, ranking it at 21 or something.
when I'm done talking, I'll go get the duct tape. Since
we will silence you.
Since y'all covered most of the just amazingness of the story, the shots, everything, as a graphic artist, I guess I'll talk about how this began. Star Wars is the reason why so much software that we have today in graphic art exists. Because George Lucas would go to his visual artist, say, I want this. And they'd say, we don't know, we can't make that. That doesn't, we don't have the technology to do that. He goes, make it.
Yeah.
He said, this is what I want. And so we have like Photoshop now because of that is a big one. The same podcast series that he just mentioned, Fat Man and Beyond, it's used to be great. It's a little less now, but it used to be great. Kevin Smith, Mark Bernardin, very smart, very good. But they talked with the visual artist who worked on Star Wars. And he says, yeah, George would say, I want a tauntaun running across the snow, or I want a such and such in the desert. They said, we can't do that, George. You know, we just don't know how to do it. He'd go, figure it out. So they have to figure it out. So I think just visually, Star Wars, A New Hope brought in all this new technology, all this new visuals. They brought in the
cinema as we know it now.
Yeah, the cinema as we know it and it made the Wilhelm screen popular.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, it's revolutionary on so many different levels, and there's a reason why it was as popular as it was, and why it has jump-started the careers of so many actors, actresses, writers, artists. And it all began with this, because this was done phenomenally.
All practical effects too, no CGI.
Yeah.
And
Well, some CGI. A lot of CGI.
Very little.
Very little, but still.
Like the blasters and the lightsabers and things like that. And even then, CGI would be a hard word to use. That was their effects.
A lot of small scale models were involved. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. I'm probably just going to get more mad at this point as we go to the next one. So we'll just go ahead and jump to number 3. We'll let Schultz go first. I know this is going to upset me because the fact that this is in front of the original is, yeah. So there you go.
That's not bad.
Return to the Jedi, number 3. No, I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world, but it shouldn't be in front of the original. Sorry. Schultz, your turn. Go ahead.
All right. Where to start? I mean, this is like I feel like a really good conclusion to the story. I mean, of the old ones. I mean, you have obviously Luke Skywalker struggling with going to the dark side, or like struggling with the dark side part of him and overcoming that. And then just the redemption of Darth Vader as well, not being able to save his loved ones. And then he finally saves one of his loved ones by basically almost like fulfilling the prophecy, I would say, of him being the chosen one by defeating Palpatine at the end. I mean, I thought that was fantastic. I love that they did that. I mean, the fight scenes were great. I don't even like know where to start. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think it was a great conclusion to the originals. I mean, there's nothing really they could have gone wrong with it. I feel like the just satisfying redemption arc for Darth Vader, and yeah, the conclusion. So I'm just gonna keep it sort of simple because I'm kind of tired. But
No, you're good.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was a great ending because they definitely started to. This is where the fight choreography really started to. We didn't have like some just like zhink, zhink. We actually had fighting. We had the Force was being used in fights. I really enjoyed that. We got to see Leia in a metal bikini choking a giant slug. I mean, love it.
You're the only one on this recording that's allowed to say that. So
we didn't notice.
I know you didn't.
We didn't notice.
And then at the end, you have like killer teddy bears, and I'm probably one of the very few people on the planet. Like, I love the original ending to Return of the Jedi, but I do kind of love the edits where they put in Hayden Christensen as a Force Ghost, and they added all of the celebrations around the galaxy. It honestly, it makes me cry every time I watch it because it's just so happy. And it's a wonderful ending to that trilogy because evil, like he said in the beginning, evil has been defeated.
Yeah.
The villain was redeemed. The other villain died. I have
kind of died.
he did.
He died.
Somehow he returned, right?
No, he didn't somehow return. He's dead. I think it's a really great end to that trilogy. I have no complaints. Wicket is amazing. Wicket rules all. I love him.
Yeah, I mean, I just now noticed that the poster you're using is like the older one because his saber's blue instead of green. And
it's not the oldest one because there was actually the original title for this movie was Revenge of the Jedi.
Right, and he changed it last minute. But I saw the blue saber and I was like, wait, that's not right. They had to change it because the sky is blue and Tatooine, and then it looked like he was holding just a hilt from the saber.
Yeah.
But anyway, great. I mean, I remember watching this one so many times as a kid. The special effects for this movie were unlike anything out there. I mean, we've already said that about A New Hope, but LucasArts was just, and still to this day, even LucasArts, they're still used for so many effects. And
I want to say this one was production. Mixed on the ranch by that point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think the last two were.
I know this last.
I know this one was. But there's just, I mean, it's really hard for us to articulate today that there was nothing out there like this back then. Nothing. And if there was, the quality was nowhere near as good. Like Star Wars was like premium quality movie. Like when you went to see a Star Wars movie, it was going to look so good. It was going to sound so good. And it was going to be just flawless. On a visual masterpiece. You know, I think about like, you know, I don't know, the new movies now or the Avatar movies where it's just like visually just stunning by just watching.
Or like a Christopher Nolan where he's really pushing
just, you know, that's the only thing we can relate to now what these movies were. And this one was kind of the climactic ending of the trilogy. It's interesting because it starts off a little slow at Jabba's palace, you know, but it's really just because it just picks up right after, you know, Empire Strikes Back. So I remember as a kid, I was like, I want to get to the battles, and all this sneaking around the Jabba's palace. I remember it being a little slow as a kid, but it wasn't very long. And Jabba as a villain, kind of a side villain of the whole movies, was kind of weird. But it was just the world building they decided to do for the movie. But a lot of the criticism with this movie, I think, was probably that and the Ewoks. But I don't think the Ewoks was a bad thing. I mean, kind of a trope in some of these movies is that evil can be defeated by small people, small things, unexpected things. Of course, C.S. Lewis is real big on that. Tolkien's really big on that. And it's funny, I got my dad's book. I literally had it right there. But one of his opening titles is the Empire never expected the little teddy bears. It's like you got Star Destroyers and Death Star looming overhead, and there's these native, little mammals that are giving the Empire a problem when they started attacking them. And who would have thought? That's the good versus evil aspect of it. Is you can have you can be the evil big bad guy, but really sometimes it's when the teddy bears start talking, you're in trouble.
Well, and what's interesting about that specific point on the Ewoks is like his original idea was actually for this to take place on Kashyyyk and it to be the Wookiees that were the people that helped. And I can see how that would cause some logistical problems with needing a bunch of people that tall to do that. But also I think you think about like a bunch of Wookiees would be able to easily overpower a bunch of stormtroopers. And so I think there's also that aspect. But I think it would have been stinking cool if they'd have done it like that. But
we kind of got it too, little this is like little Kashyyyk. Of course, and then we get the actual, capital ship space battle around the Death Star. Visually fantastic. I mean, we're seeing Star Destroyers go toe to toe with Rebel ships. That was just, as a kid, I remember just we didn't have that sort of, spaceship battle like that, not quite on that scale. And with space fantasies like this, they tend to emulate like actual naval combat instead of like Star Trek, where it's kind of more, it's a little different. But it's a fantastic movie. Looks great. Can't really say anything bad about it. The score is so good, especially when Vader and Luke are fighting at the end. I mean, it's just like I get chill bumps thinking about it because I can hear it. It's just extremely good. The acting's fantastic. We get to see Ian McDiarmid really come in with the Emperor, which we hadn't really seen, especially in the original cuts. They brought him in for the little hologram scene in Empire Strikes Back. But little did we know how much we were going to get more of him later down the road with other movies. But he really sold it.
Fun fact about that is the hologram scene from the original Empire Strikes Back was played by a woman. So for those who didn't know that,
a woman, and they just dubbed the voiceover when she get that big bulgy eye, which is creepy. I think this movie is just one of those Star Wars movies that no one disliked ever. Because it's just so good, and some people it's their favorite Star Wars movie of all time because it's just the ending of his journey, and I think a lot of people were kind of weirded out by Luke and Leia being brother and sister. I remember reading a lot of people did not like that about this movie. I like reading old reviews when they come out, and people were just really weirded out by it. They just didn't like that. They wanted the main hero to be with the main girl, but I think it was a good writing decision because it showed that there was more going on in the story, that they were all connected in ways they didn't even realize, and that there was like this kind of bigger plan that the Force had with them coming together to defeat their dad and the whole prophecy thing, which we didn't even really know about at the time. I could go on and on about this movie because it's just really, really good. It's just really, really good.
For me, again, this movie and really all the three original, they may not be flawless, but everything involved with the throne room scene, it's really one of the highest points of the three, original movies. The conflict, the fight between Luke and Vader, the Emperor, like we'd never actually seen him up to this point. This was when he showed up. And he was just so good at being, manipulative and evil, and the music score. I mean, it's just brings it all together. Obviously, there's not any plot holes or anything, but I mean those moments alone. I think this movie is underrated by a lot of people, but I think those moments alone is why I've got it where I've got it.
Yeah, and this is definitely one where I feel like you can see a lot of the, not necessarily retcons, but the places where they sort of changed, George Lucas sort of changed his mind on the plot as he got through. Because I know originally, like, Luke and Leia weren't supposed to be brother and sister. That was not in the original idea. There's a second Death Star in this movie. Originally, the Death Star was supposed to be only at the end of this movie. And the reason that it's in the first one is because they weren't really sure. One, they weren't really sure if they're going to get another movie, and two, they wanted some sort of really intense climactic sequence to end the movie with, instead of them just escaping the Death Star. And so they made it to where it was in the first one. So that's why there's one in this one, because that's originally that was the plan to begin with. Just kind of like a fun fact. And so they kind of just kept it and used it as they're just in the process of building the next one kind of thing. So I think it's handled pretty well, though, all things considered. Yeah, for me, I mean, it's my top three. There's not a whole lot I have left to say that people haven't already said. Yeah, it's just got some really iconic sequences. Jabba's pleasure barge and his, that whole fight sequence with Boba Fett, and Luke's flipping and jumping around everywhere. We'd never seen him with that kind of power before, which is just killing the Rancor and all this, just crazy stuff going on. And so, you have those sort of things. You have the speeder chase on Endor.
Oh yeah.
Obviously the lightsaber duel with Vader, and then the space battle to me is one of my favorite sequences in this movie. Somehow they managed to make it more intense and epic than the one from the original, and it's just it's hard to do that. And so I mean, it just all around great. I'd say my only gripe is that the Ewoks, obviously you get a little bit of that Jar Jar in there, where it's like they probably could have used a little less screen time than they had, but it's just one of those things. There, bro. Yeah, it's just one of those minor gripes. But I mean, they do such a good. It's hard. Some people don't realize it's hard to tie up trilogies and TV shows and
books,
whatever it is. And so the fact that they're able to pull it off so well, I think, is a testament to just the iconic nature of this trilogy. And there's just really not much more you can say about it.
There's a controversy with the size of the second Star Destroyer. In canon, there's so many different resources. Supposedly, this Death Star 2 is either supposed to be just a little bit bigger than the first one, and some resource manuals had it like a lot bigger than the first one. So, which one do you subscribe to?
I never thought about it, to be honest with you. I didn't realize that.
I think I lean toward just a little bit bigger.
I'd say a little bit. I'd say bigger too. The fact that the ships are able to fly inside of it, which obviously it's being constructed, so it's not completely finished. But we could go down rabbit holes with that sort of thing, though, like all day.
Oh yeah, I just always thought it was interesting because we all assume it's supposed to be the exact same one, but apparently, like in the early manuals and books that came out, it was supposed to be a lot bigger. Then they come back and said no, it's a little smaller, and it's just one of those like nerd actually. It's a little bigger.
Yeah, actually, which is
actually, guys, I just was interested in what your opinion was on that.
Yeah, I have no opinion because other than I'd subscribe to Drew, maybe just a slightly bigger. But yeah, let's jump into our top two here. This is these are the big ones. So number 2 is going to be The Empire Strikes Back.
Andrew!
Maybe I did this just to make everybody mad.
You did this to spite me, I think.
I think I did. A lot of people think this is the best Star Wars movie of all time. Obviously, John's one of them.
No, it is.
It is. Like, I do not think that is a wrong statement. I think the movie can be overrated because people just fall in love with it.
No, it can't.
But it's great. It's a wonderful movie.
You're just wrong. So
I'm just wrong.
I'm great.
Your Honor, he's just wrong.
I'm great in debates, as you can imagine.
You know, when this movie first came out, apparently a lot of people didn't like it, which I thought is interesting because it aged so much better than I think people thought. Apparently, a lot of people did not like it. There's a YouTube compilation of these people with video cameras outside the theater interviewing people like, what do you think about it? They were like, it sucked. And they're like saying all this stuff. And it's so weird. Like their criticism was really odd. I can't remember, but just go look it up. I'll have to send it to you, John, because you'll get a kick out of it. It'll probably trigger you even more than my number 20 on the screen. Because, I mean, it's like stuff that you're just like, huh? You know, you're like, why is that a problem with you? But I remember as a kid watching this one to death too. And I remember I was always sad because I was like, this is the movie where the bad guys win a lot, you know. At the very beginning, you know, the Hoth sequence is just so amazing. The high contrast of the planet Hoth after being in space so much in other movies, and especially the first movies, was a really interesting aesthetic they chose to do that hadn't been done a lot, I think, in sci-fi. I really like the Hoth sequence is great. Probably one of my very favorite sequences because, of course, it's all done in models, which I have a heart for, you know, old school models like that because it looks really cool. But I mean, it's, you know, the type of the movie Empire Strikes Back is really right in your face at the beginning because, I mean, it starts off with probe droids dropping in and the Empire's landing and invading. And, you know, these rebels, you see them running and screaming and they're getting blown up. And, you know, if you just watched the movie before, you know, it's this, you know, wonderful ending. The Death Star's blown up. You know, it's just kind of like, dang, you know, it's like things, you know, the Empire's still out there. The Death Star's destroyed, but the Empire's still out there. So the world building of this movie is probably, I think the world building attitude and where people love greater Star Wars, greater as in like the greater surrounding Star Wars universe, it's probably all stems from this because we got, you know, Bespin, we got Lando, we got weird Ugnaughts in junk piles with C3PO, we got, you know, and, you know, we got Yoda who comes in out of nowhere and he's this puppet guy. So this really, Star Wars expands here more than just, you know, what we saw in A New Hope. So, you know, this is where like the universe really just really opened up. And then we get the Super Star Destroyer, one of my favorites. I mean, the Executor class is just beautiful Star Wars. It's massive. I remember when we would eat pizza, I would always have like a Super Star Destroyer slice that would come in pizza. You know, there was like the thinner ones, you know, that they would cut. And when I was a kid, I was like, that's the Super Star Destroyer pizza slice. You know, it's little kid stuff. You know, you see little things like that you remember when you're talking about these old movies. I don't know why I have 20. That's just where it landed, but I don't hate this movie at all. It's wonderful.
Your logic makes no sense.
I'm sorry, but there's
you spend so much time being like, this is a really great movie, guys. I promise. But it's like, but it's so low.
I think it's because our podcast, we always come from the episode just like, okay, we're doing this because we love it, but here's why we don't. You know, here's why we don't like it. So it's almost like we're playing devil's advocate because we're all nerds. I mean, if I didn't like this movie, I wouldn't be here, bro. Like, and so it's,
you literally
movies better.
You literally haven't given us like any negatives for this movie.
Negatives for this movie? I mean, okay, so you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi dies, and
he's already dead. He's not in this movie.
I know. Let me finish. In the second movie, we get this weird puppet in a swamp that's supposed to be this master. Like from like it's a harkening back to like maybe those old samurai movies where, you know, you got to find that master up in like this, you know, foggy mountains or something. But like, you know, the audience is like, so this little green guy that's in a swamp is like super powerful. You know, that's kind of a weird concept. And he's a puppet. I mean, Jim Henson, you know, like 70s. That was kind of a weird thing to see in a sci-fi movie with, you know, all these special effects. All of a sudden we're going to default to a puppet. That's a negative, John. We got a giant space worm that's got an ecosystem inside of it. That's weird. There's sound in space. That's weird too. You know, we got this guy who's like running like a smuggling gas ring in a place called Cloud City, but it's a gas giant. Okay, why don't they call it Gas City? I mean, I could go on, bro. Like, I could go on and on and on and on. But I mean, it's a great movie. Just because it's 20 doesn't mean I Look, we can't put every single Star Wars that's ever existed in the top 10.
I mean, we could if we wanted to.
You can't do it. I had to put it somewhere, and this is where it fell. Because there's other movies that I like better. But there's nothing bad about this movie that just makes me hate it.
Again, you put the Book of Boba Fett at 16.
I really liked the Book of Boba Fett. It was fun. I really, really liked it.
But you know what? We may not.
This is why it's a consensus ranking.
We may not. Yeah.
This is why it's a consensus ranking.
That one phrase that you had to edit out a few episodes ago. I mean, it gave you a nerd. You know what? Okay, so that gave me a better nerd. You know what? Does when I watch Empire Strikes Back. If you really want to know, that's probably what it boils down to.
All right, Megan, we need you to straighten this out.
The fight sequence with Vader and Luke is amazing. I mean, and then the climactic, getting back to serious news since you guys are all picking on me. The number one criticism that people had for this movie was finding out that Luke was the son of Darth Vader. Like this, so the main antagonist, his son is Luke. That's like mind blowing to audiences who have never seen Star Wars to this day. I love seeing those YouTube compilations where it's like my girlfriend watching Star Wars for the first time or something, and it's like I'm bothered. And she's like, he's lying, and they're freaking, they're mad. They're like, no. And I love that. I love that because it makes me think about it. Because I remember as a kid, it was like, what? It makes you feel sick. You're like, what? And I mean, that's obviously the big ending. But it's iconic. What do you want me to say? It's ranked 20. It's not because it's bad.
Listen, I think
I'm just stressing.
Superb storyline. Visuals are all there. First class acting. I think it takes all the aspects that were good about A New Hope and just builds on them, makes them better. And Yoda. I mean, what more could you possibly want or need from a movie?
Mm-hmm. I think Frank Oz did a great job bringing Yoda to life.
Yeah.
It was not easy to do.
No, it's really hard to make a little green frog man become such an iconic sage in people's lives.
I kind of wish they hadn't changed him back to CGI in which one in the prequel movies, because in the Phantom Menace he was a puppet. They decided to keep him as a puppet, which I thought was really cool. I wish they'd have kept that, but I guess these days people would be like, "Ooh, puppet."
Yeah, I don't think you can make a puppet flip around like he did.
Without some guy to stick back there doing this,
I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you? Were you still going?
No, I'm good.
Like I did.
No, you're good.
Okay. I think I know one reason, because of the trilogy, this is my least favorite, but I think it's mostly because your heroes are separated. It's like if in Harry Potter, Ron and Hermione and Harry just went to different places. So that is a hard pill to swallow when you're watching your heroes not be together.
Yeah.
So I think that's my biggest issue. And like you said, the bad guy wins at the end of this one, which is not something that happens. But it's such a good setup for the third movie that you almost can't be upset about it. But I think those are my just the reasons why it's not my favorite. But visually, again, it's a stunning movie. Frank Oz, like I said, brings this iconic character who is a Jim Henson puppet. He is a Muppet. He's not even a puppet. He is a Muppet. He is Kermit the Frog's cousin. But he does such a good job bringing this character to life that he is one of the most iconic images of Star Wars, because we were watching Ink Masters, and that is Star Wars Challenge, and this girl, her nickname was Tattoo Baby. She had never seen Star Wars, but she's like, I got the little green guy. That's the only one I know from Star Wars, but I got him. So
everybody knows Yoda.
Everybody knows Yoda. So, all in all, great movie in my top 10.
Yeah, good for you. Good job. Good job.
So I always usually tell people whenever we talk about Empire Strikes Back, and I always tell people that the reason why it's one of my favorites is literally because when I was a kid, seeing Yoda whack R2 with a stick just always made me bust out laughing, like hysterically. And I tell people still, as an adult watching it, it makes me bust out laughing hysterically every time I see it. Also, I mean, it started off hot with the whole like rebels fighting the AT walkers on Hoth, kind of like what Andrew was talking about. I mean, that scene, I think that was like probably like one of my more favorite like just fight scenes in the entire movie, besides obviously Darth Vader versus Luke. I mean, just the entire like environment too, just like them being on a winter planet was really cool. It was like something different. I love that. Obviously you got the iconic sibling on sibling kissing, going on that everyone remembers about pretty much.
That didn't age good. That did not age well.
Not at all. And then obviously, your iconic ending with Luke finding out that Darth Vader is his father, getting his hand chopped off, and then the villain, obviously, kind of like what Megan said, winning. And so like it made you like really excited to want to watch the next one, because you're like, holy, like, heck, like what just happened? Like I didn't even know like what just happened. I didn't even know what happens next, and they ended it perfectly, because it just got everyone so excited and pumped to see this third one and see how it all ends and unfolds and comes to an end. I mean, they did it perfectly. So
this one was funnier too. Of all the original ones, it's the funnier of all three. Like it had like the Yoda smacking the R2. You got Han and Leia's banter, which is just hilarious because the tension between them is so obvious. But
Carrie Fisher's crackdown.
We see that in the third one.
I thought it was in this one.
We see in the third one when they're on the shuttle and her little hands on the shoulder, and you see this long nail. But there's just a lot of funnier moments in this one that I didn't realize until you said that about Yoda smacking R2. I thought, there's just a lot of more comedic moments in this one than the other three movies.
Yeah, and the reason because I think I have to preface a little bit with my number one and number two, because obviously this one's my first one. I had the original at 2. They're somewhat interchangeable to a degree. The reason I list this one as number 1 is because if I were to sit and watch this one and the original back to back, I'm obviously, as you all know, I'm a critic at heart. And so,
really?
No,
Really?
Yeah, no, I know it's hard to believe, but so when I look at it clearly from a cinematography point of view, this is just a more complete movie, and it's not, it's not to take anything away from the original, but it's like you just go into all the different creative choices with this one, from George hiring, Erwin Kershner to direct to, he intentionally went with a different tone in this one, which I think was a big reason Andrew was bringing up why there were some reasons why people didn't maybe like it initially, was the tone of the movie is a lot darker than the first one. Mm-hmm. And so you get into this one but it was intentional because he wanted a very character driven, more interpersonal story. And Erwin Kershner I know very little about him as a director. He was older at the time, but that was kind of his specialty, was just fleshing out characters, and that's what this movie does better than any of them. Is it takes these characters that we know somewhat, and it breaks them down to their very core, like what they're about, and really what is going on inside their head. And I think that's what makes this one so good. Is you get, although it is slower paced at times because of that, you get all these great character moments with, Luke on Hoth with Yoda, Luke on Dagobah with Yoda, and then just him sort of wrestling with this idea of becoming a Jedi, and how that sort of comes up against what he understands to this point in his life, and all the things that he's having to let go of, and you get all that aspect. You get Han and Leia's their love affair sort of blossoming in this one as well, and just these moments that are just so emotionally impactful throughout the movie. that you don't get to the same depth that you get maybe in the first one. And then obviously it's capped off with one of the biggest plot twists in cinema history with the reveal of Darth Vader as Luke's father. And so, the opening to this movie is the best opening of any Star Wars movie. The Hoth sequence, I think that goes without saying. The movie immediately jumps right into it, and it's intense. And so I think that's, it just pulls you right in, and it never really stops. And I think that's just the sort of the awesomeness of this film is just the ability, like how was it possible to take something as phenomenal as the original Star Wars and somehow do better? Like that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in movies.
How do you follow up your grand slam?
And so it's pretty crazy. Like when you think about it that way. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
You made a good point, John, about each character getting more of an individual fleshing out. Like the movie really focuses on, and even Vader gets that. We see him choking Imperial officers, and we see him kneeling at some sort of hologram, talking to some hooded master. Vader was considered like the number one most intimidating evil protagonist, and then all of a sudden this movie antagonist. Sorry, and then all of a sudden we see him, he's killing people, he's intimidating, and everyone's literally shaking as he's walking by, and then all of a sudden he's bowing down to someone, and you're kind of like, what? It opens up, it fleshed out him individually, like you said. Everyone got a little bit of a moment. It may not have been 20 minutes, but it was just enough that you're like, man, there's something really big going on here. You're watching it for the first time, you're like, who is Vader bowing down? It's just like, what? He's the guy that everyone's scared of. So it really opened up that universe building. Like there's just a whole lot more going on, and you even get to see him this hyper fixation on Luke. Like I think it's even in the opening crawl, I think it even mentions that Vader is obsessed with finding Luke Skywalker. So I think that's what it says.
It does.
And so is he, is it just revenge? Is he after, or is there something more? And it just begs that question. Of course, we find out later why. It's his son. And but that's a really good point, John, because the movie is really good about everybody gets a little bit of and then we get Lando, a new person that comes in.
No, he's phenomenal.
Which is completely, it's I don't want to say forgettable, but because of after the first movie, bringing in a new person to the cast was tough. And Megan even said, like everyone's by themselves, which is weird. That's kind of as an audience, you coming in ready to see your crew edit again, and they're all split up. But you get this new guy, and you don't know if you can trust him. But Billy D. Williams is wonderful in this movie. I think him coming in added to the success because his dubious nature and Han's past really fleshed out Han even more, which opened it up all the way into the third movie. Because Jabba by himself is kind of like, he's always talking about it, but we don't know who Jabba is, but Lando kind of helps bring that in that, Han's got a past, and there's these people that are kind of orbiting him, and that we don't know. But yeah, you made a good point about that, because everyone does get fleshed out, which is really cool. That's hard to do in a movie too. You only got 2 hours, right? You only got 2 hours, and you got to wow them, and you got to tell a story at the same time.
Yep.
It's tough.
All right. Well, we are at number 1. Finally made it to the end of our consensus rankings. And if you've been following along, then what number 1 is. So that's going to be Revenge of the Sith. And as you can see, 3 of us had it at number 1. Obviously, I'm not far off, and then Andrew's just Andrew. So, you get what you get.
The 20s. Still behind.
That's a very nice way. You're saying you get what you get. It's a very nice way of saying screw that guy.
I mean, you said it, not me.
It's funny how you guys are just acting like I don't like the movie. It's just really funny.
It's not that in the back of our heads we're thinking listing all the ones that you had above it, and we're like, nope.
Let's see. You had.
He's calling me out right here.
You had the Acolyte above this.
I really like the Acolyte.
Oh my!
You had Obi-Wan Kenobi. You had Obi-Wan Kenobi above this.
Like
You had the Rise of Skywalker at number 5.
Yeah, I really like that.
You did have Rise of Skywalker over this.
Well, let's discuss why. I mean, it's actually not complicated.
It's not like you just a weird fella. It's all it is.
It's a weird fella. See, a nice way of saying screw that guy. This movie's really sad to me. I don't know. It's just really, really sad. It's really dark, and of course, from the beginning of the prequels, we know that Anakin's going to be Darth Vader. I mean, from the very beginning, one of the teaser posters has little Anakin, and his shadow has Vader's silhouette. So I mean, it's no secret. I remember going to see this movie, and the last, I guess, there's like 5 endings. You just think it's going to end, and it just keeps. There's always one more scene. But I remember seeing this. I guess I was in like 6th, 7th grade, and it was just really, really. I just remember being very sad at the end. Because seeing, I don't know, domestic violence live on screen. It's pretty rough to watch, especially on a volcanic planet. That just the background is just you're just like, dang, dude. And Padme.
I've never heard it put that way before.
Number 18, brother. So we got, and then poor Padme, who of course we all had like a crush on her, as kids. At least I did. I mean, Natalie Portman is just not an ugly individual. So seeing her cry and pour her heart out to Anakin on that landing pad on Mustafar is it's gut wrenching, and she's crying. She's like, you're breaking my heart. And it's not just like, why are you doing this? She made it very personal. It's just a sad, 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 sad movie. And then I think that's my biggest complaint about this is, and you could maybe attribute to the whole trilogy, maybe, but they just don't flesh out Anakin's fall to the dark side, other than the fact that he's just whiny and is wanting power. Which I guess if you boil it down, that's dictators and evil people and are technically kind of whiny and they want power. If you boil it down, so it's not like it's off base in the fundamentals. But I always felt like it was an odd. I just didn't like the way they did it. He was afraid he was going to lose Padme. He's having dreams of losing her, and Palpatine's incorrectly seduced him, saying there's powers out there that can save Padme. And the theater scene, where he's basically telling him that there's means of saving Padme out there. It's not even really a promise. He always says these things, but it's never really a promise. And so he's bamboozled by Palpatine in a way that's not even really a guarantee. I think it would have been more interesting if Palpatine just kind of leveled with him and said, all right, look, I'm a Sith Lord. I've been a Sith Lord. I've been behind all of this, and seduced him in a way of like, the Jedi are wrong. You've always felt it. They've never treated you right. You have more potential in yourself. You got power within you. They won't even make you a master. They kind of touched on it, but it's just not done very well, in my opinion. There's no seduction. It was more just, he just kind of did. Anakin just kind of fell into his whiny self. And then, next thing you know, he's cutting off Mace Windu's arm, and Mace Windu's falling from like 100,000 stories off in Coruscant. I don't know. I just never really felt like it was done well. It's done okay. That's probably why.
Can I counter that? Like, this is legit.
Sure.
Like, I'm going to give you a slightly different framing of this and see if it helps too. So I think when you look at how they handle his fall to the dark side in this one, you have to view it from the lens of the original trilogy and the first 2 in the prequels, to where this was George Lucas's culmination of all 6 movies that he had made to that point, or 5 movies than this one. But if you think about it leading up to this one, in the first 2 movies, it's about him being pulled out of the only life he's ever known, taken from his mother, the only person he's ever loved, and into a situation that's completely foreign to him, with the hope of, the hope and the promise of adventure and all of these different things, to be a Jedi so he can go free the slaves and do all of these great things. He gets into it, and he loses his mother. He He's sort
that's
of fighting with his inner demons after that. Like, hey, his visceral response is to just slaughter everybody that had anything to do with it, but then it's like, okay. Also, when you look at his character from the point of view of Darth Vader in the especially in Return of the Jedi, in that one he really comes across as, a reluctant villain in the sense of he's too far gone to turn things around, but there's something in there that is still good. And I think the reason it works in Revenge of the Sith is because if you take all of that's happened to him up to that point, it's not that that the whole thing was he's afraid to lose Padme. It was the fact that he had lost his mother and he wasn't strong enough to save her, and so he's having these dreams about her, the same he had about his mother before she died. And so now he's like, I refuse to let that happen to her the way it happened to my mother. And so then it's about how can I gain enough power to prevent this bad thing from happening. And then Sidious manipulates that to bring him in on his side of things and eventually just basically enslaves him to that, because he realizes once he's committed the crime of essentially helping to kill Mace Windu and turning on the Jedi, that there's no, like, he's crossed over the line. And so at that point, you can see it in his face. He's like, what have I done? And he's like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. He has no choice at that point, essentially, because he's already made up his mind. He's already done sort of the unspeakable, the unforgivable thing of attacking another Jedi and defending a Sith Lord. And so you look at
he doubled down by killing all the kids and all the other Jedi that he's grown up with. That's what I have a problem with. The Jedi never did anything to him for him to have all this hatred.
Well, they
hinted
that throughout the movie, though, that he's not happy with the way the Jedi are handling things.
But they didn't flesh it out very well, and that was my criticism.
They could have fleshed it out more.
And then next thing you know, he's killing all the Jedi that he's grown up with.
But you also have to think of that, like, once he succumbs completely to the dark side, which he does there in that room after Mace Windu is killed, is that now all that stuff he's sort of been holding at bay, he lets it all in. And now he's like, okay, the one thing I need is to save Padme. I'll do this guy who's telling me he knows how to do that, or at least figure it out. I'm going to do whatever he says so that I have access to that power. And so at that point, then his old self, he essentially, he throws it out, or he at least masks it. And you can see in the scene where he ignites his lightsaber with the younglings, in his face, it's something, one of those things of like, he regrets what he's about to do, but
he doesn't take joy in it.
No. Yeah. So it's like, that's the last good in himself sort of eking away, but he's consumed with that attachment to Padme, and that's the thing for Jedi, that's like those attachments can be your downfall. And I think that's the ultimate message with that. Like, it's just another way of framing it to where if you take it as a whole, you can see sort of why he's that's
a pretty good rebuttal. I just felt like it could have done better, and that's what I was saying earlier. They tried to do it, and I feel like maybe, and of course George Lucas has every right to change his mind as he makes his own movies, but sometimes it's hard for me to digest his fall so quickly, his doubling down on the dark side. And I understand, when you make a bad decision, sometimes people do double down on that. But in Anakin's case, I don't know. It was hard for me to accept maybe a little and just digest that was, he did this terrible thing, but then he just goes on a rampage. But I'll meet you halfway in your criticism and say that people who do grow up with a lot of trauma and a lot of anger issues, sometimes when they give an inch to their anger, the anger takes 20 miles. And so I'll agree with you there. And then Star Wars is really big on that. If you give in your anger a little bit, it's almost like a wildfire sort of thing.
Well, and he'd already done it once with the Tusken Raiders, so he'd already stepped over that line. Yeah.
But the movie, I personally felt like it could have been done a little bit better. Maybe Mace Windu should have been kind of like a horror, and they kind of technically did a little bit in the Clone Wars TV show. and he never hid his disdain. He didn't really necessarily like Anakin. You know, he always kind of was skeptical of him as a person, as a Jedi, and everything. Mace Windu was. It would have been kind of just maybe if he would have been maybe the focal point of a lot of a lot of his I don't know, disrespect from the Jedi, that, you know, he took it all out on Mace Windu, and that was kind of part of it. I don't know. And then, you know, and then she becomes very hateful towards Obi-Wan, which is even more sad, you know, because, you know, Obi-Wan at the end is crying, you know, you were my brother, I loved you. And he had to dismember this guy this kid he helped raise and train since he was little. And Obi-Wan was maybe like 16, 17, you know, they were both kind of young. And Anakin's hatred towards Obi-Wan is frustrating. Because I just felt like it was undeserved from the movies. We're talking about in like just brackets, just the trilogy. Now we get TV shows and books. It does flesh it out, but just from the movies, it's sometimes hard for me to believe. So that's my criticism of the movie. But the movie as a whole is really, really, really good. Probably has some of the best action sequences of all the movies. I mean, you got the Kashyyyk battle. You got not Duel of the Fates, Battle of Heroes, I guess is the John Williams title of the song. You know, the Mustafar duel is just crazy. Their fighting styles are almost identical, reflecting that they basically grew up together as Jedi. Of course, you got the opening space scene. Gosh, the Battle of Coruscant is just incredible. The opening drums and then just them coming right into all that is just wild. Side note, the last couple episodes of the Clone Wars runs parallel concurrently with this movie. I don't know if you guys have ever seen, like, I guess it was like a compilation of someone, like they spliced in that episode into this movie. Really freaking cool. If you haven't seen it, do it, because it almost changes the movie in a really cool way. I always personally felt like Ahsoka dying would have been of course the movie was made before, but if Ahsoka died in the show, it would have been really good story building about Anakin losing all the women in his life, or at least people he's close to in his life. He lost Qui-Gon, he lost his mom. The fear of losing Padme, Ahsoka dying would have really, really been a good ingredient to that formula, in my opinion.
But in a way, she kind of did die.
She did kind of die, and that made him a little bit more upset towards the Jedi the way they treated her. So, but anyway, I don't want to talk too much because obviously you guys love it more than I do, so you probably have better things to say. But it's visually amazing. Gosh, I mean. And of course, my favorite lightsaber fight ever is Sidious versus all those Jedi in his office. It's just crazy. As a matter of fact, I found some deleted scenes of the day, which wasn't even on like the little DVD. This was like one of those like really, really scrapped like B-roll, C-roll, D-roll that they never even put in as a deleted scene. And the fight scene was supposed to go on a lot longer between Mace Windu and Sidious. Sidious' fighting style is just ridiculous. I mean, it's literally like a flying snake, which is a perfect representation of who he is. I used to remember all the different Jedi forms by heart, but his was like his own, you know. He does this creepy growl screech. I mean, it's like this pure evil instinct, dark side coming out of him. I always thought that was really interesting and really cool. Of course, Sidious taking out these two Jedi Masters in like half a second is pretty wild. Padawans flanking the side of Mace Windu. No, these were Masters, and he just like two's dead, you know, and you're just like, dang. So you can't. And then the Yoda versus Sidious is just crazy. The imagery of him using the Senate as a weapon against the Jedi. I mean, it's just like it's very climactic. Yep. Go, Megan.
Unlike you wishing that it had been fleshed out more, I think it adds to the heartbreak that he was so, I guess, quickly sent to the dark side. Before we realized, all the stuff that was going on in the Clone Wars TV show, I think it definitely showed how once you let a little bit of the dark side start to influence you, it can really take control really quickly. And I weirdly do like it because it is so heartbreaking, because it is just so full of emotion. Like, you've seen this young man who had a life full of slavery and trauma redeem himself by becoming a Jedi Knight, but then still letting that trauma bring him right back down to the dark side. You said most of what I was going to say as far as, all the good stuff about this movie, like fight scenes, fantastic. Dialogue, great. Hayden Christensen's acting skills, much better. Much better. When he screams out, "I hate you," it's gut wrenching.
Yeah.
It's so gut wrenching. Padme saying, "You're breaking my heart." I spend most of this movie either on the verge of tears or I cry a lot during Star Wars, honestly. But I love it so much. This and Harry Potter is what I cry about. But it's just such a good movie. And we also get a little bit more of the other, I'm trying to think of the term, but the rest of the universe, like we're brought in, we learn about Plagueis a little bit, which, if you read the Sidious book, Plagueis was alive during Phantom Menace.
That book's not canon, actually. He
just died, according to the book. So you can see how insidious is.
Right.
He's like, oh, there was a Sith Lord who almost learned about immortality.
He knew exactly what to say to Anakin.
Yes, I think
I will say that much. He knew exactly what to say to him.
The ingenious way that to bring in Anakin so quickly into the dark side. So while it wasn't fleshed out, I think it still adds a lot to it that you didn't get so much. Like he didn't have reasons 1 through 100. He had these core reasons, and that's what drove him there. I think that's what makes it so heartbreaking and yet so good. And I hear my baby screaming, so I'll be back.
He's getting his.
I'll keep mine pretty short. Because I think all y'all have a lot more complete thoughts, I guess, than I do. But I absolutely thrilled with everything about this movie. Obviously, it's my favorite Star Wars movie ever. I guess my dad. I could say my dad's Star Wars was the 3 original trilogy, and then these 3 were kind of my Phantom Menace, Clone Wars, and this one was kind of my Star Wars, I guess you could say, growing up. But so number 3, the dramatics is, acting, dialogue, soundtrack, cinematography, characters, intensity. You can't beat it. There's not been a movie yet that's beat it, to be honest with you guys.
Yeah, obviously I have it at number 1 as well. One of my all-time favorite Star Wars movie. I think it just, I don't know, so many iconic moments. On top of that, I think Johnny, you said Empire Strikes Back, the opening sequence was probably like one of the best ones. I think personally, Revenge of the Sith has the best opening scene when it comes to, I would say
they're pretty close. Like I won't disagree with you. They're pretty close. Like,
yeah. I just think it just started off so hot, just like going straight into a space battle of them just fighting other pilots and stuff like that. And then they go into the ship to fighting Count Dooku, and Count Dooku dying was very shocking. You're like, oh my God, what just happened? And then going to getting introduced to General Grievous. Like it was just so many multiple things that were just happening at once. And it just was very chaotic, and it just started off crazy. So I love that part of it. Fight scenes. I think honestly, this one has probably the best fight scenes in all of Star Wars. Yoda versus Palpatine is iconic. Grievous versus Obi-Wan. That iconic as well to me, at least. I love that fight scene also. Fantastic. Obviously, Anakin versus Obi-Wan, very emotional, and just the choreography. I can't speak right now. The choreography is really good in that as well. The fight scene is amazing. The score as well, the music playing in the background, I think it's Battle of the Heroes, I believe, is what it's called. That entire score going on in the background as they're fighting is amazing.
Battle of the Heroes and Villains.
Yes. Oh, is it in Villains? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I believe.
But I mean, I think that's like one of the better scores as well we've had in Star Wars. I mean, it's just the ending to it, obviously coming to a climax with Obi-Wan cutting off Anakin's legs and him getting lit on fire. I mean, it's just like very emotional and just like jaw-dropping. So, I mean, and seeing it as a kid, I think it just very nostalgic as well, I guess, part of it to me. And that's the reason why I probably put it at 1 also. But I just think it has so many iconic moments. So,
and I guess I'll kind of round things out. I've already expressed some with this, but I mean, I had a hard time deciding whether I wanted to put this one above Return of the Jedi or not. I can't put it above the original two. Just I can't. But as much as like, I don't think it's that much of a step down from those two. But yeah, I don't know. It's like the best looking Star Wars movie by far. Like, I don't think it, in terms of obviously the older 6, you know, obviously special effects in ways have gotten a lot better since then. So like Rogue One might look nicer than this, but you get my point. But yeah, best looking in terms of the George Lucas Star Wars movies. Action sequences are phenomenal. It just visually looks so good. You know, just I don't know. I love when you really, like I was talking about earlier, when you dissect this movie from the point of view of all 6 of the movies, and you just see the intentionality put into really making this movie work, considering where all the characters have to end up going into the original trilogy after this one's over. They just do such a good job of bringing all the characters to that point and really tying in all these different story choices and different character decisions that have led them to the points that they are at the end. And I think just going that it is probably the most emotional Star Wars movie. And when you go from at the beginning of the movie, this clear like brotherhood between Anakin and Obi-Wan to just like sheer heartbreak at the end, it packs a punch. And I love that he's intentional about doing that. When you see the opening sequence and they're sort of joking with each other and they're handling all these issues really well, and it's just like this buddy thing, and then you get to the end of the movie and it's just like God, it's gut-wrenching. And but I think it's got such a great payoff in that regard. Is like sometimes the endings that aren't the happiest can be the most satisfying in some ways. I guess like Infinity War is a good way to look at it. Like the way
that's a good one.
That movie is laid out. Like it's a very depressing ending, but it's so well done throughout the movie that it's got such a great payoff. So that's kind of where I'm at. I love Obi-Wan Kenobi, and this is my favorite version of him in this movie. He's at the peak of his power, and I think that's just, I love, you know, he's got the iconic beard and the nice, you know, swishy hair, and you know, he's just doing, I don't know, it's the best version of him, and just great locations and great scenes. And I don't know, it's a fun movie, but also just it's hard to watch for just the emotional aspect of it. But
it is,
I don't know, they tie it together so well to end the trilogy, and I think that's what matters the most at the end of things.
John, you might know something. This is a legitimate question. Like when George was writing the movie, the very end, Yoda kind of drops a last minute bombshell to Obi-Wan. He's like, "Oh, by the way, let me show you how to commune with Qui-Gon. You know, he's found a way to the nether force," or some phrasing like that. I remember, you know, watching that the first time, just kind of being like, okay. And I guess it was kind of a little nugget that they dropped, like, this is how Obi-Wan's going to come back after he's died. That was kind of their way of saying, how does Obi-Wan have this power? Which is an interesting thing, because they've never really made a point to focus on particular powers in the movie. I don't know. Do you know anything about that? Was that like a last minute thing? Because it felt, I don't know, it felt dropped in. Everything's all bad, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, and then the movie ends. And it just
I don't know any, like, personally, I don't know what his thoughts were behind that. I think he's just going for a, like, if you're like me or some of us, where you're into the more like the extended universe books and a lot of the other lore of Star Wars, you understand, at least in the original canon, who knows what the canon is now? Nobody knows. But the original idea was that each individual Jedi sort of specialized in different Force abilities, and there were certain things, some that some could do and some that others couldn't, and so on and so forth. And so this idea was that, hey, we have to have an explanation for how he's able to come back as a Force ghost, because it just wasn't something that you ever saw. And so I think it was just sort of like a passing line to be like, hey, Qui-Gon figured this out. Also, it's a way to give Obi-Wan some sort of reasoning to be where he is in the original Star Wars, where like he's clearly still had some training, he's become wiser, he's learned things, and he's been able to grasp some of that from communing with his master. And I think that's kind of what he's going for, I feel like, when he's doing that. But I don't think there's any like I don't have any like inside nugget to that specifically, but I can surmise from that.
Yeah, I knew about the Force power being a thing. It just always, to me, rewatching it, always just felt like a last second ad, for the audience. But I just didn't know if that was something George wanted to add last second, because
knowing George, probably
knowing him. Well, he changed the title for an entire movie last second, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was the same thing.
Well, we made it. We made it through all 29 of our Star Wars consensus rankings. We hope y'all enjoyed hearing all of our rankings, and getting to participate in the debate and discussion. It was entertaining for sure. I want to thank specifically Andrew and Megan from the Daystrom Dropouts Podcast. If you have not checked these guys out, if you are into anything Star Trek or just into some good deep dives into TV and things like that, please check their...
really hate Vulcans, because we do a lot of Vulcan bashing.
That's outside my area of expertise, but I will say, yes, please go support them and their podcast. I think you're everywhere podcasts can be found, correct? Pretty much.
Yes, I believe so.
Yep.
Okay, and y'all are on Instagram. I don't know what your handle is, but
it's just at Daystrom Dropouts.
Okay, so yes, please go support them, show them some love, and we're really appreciated y'all coming on and doing this with us. As usual, thank you to the fellow rebels on this this channel for little guy too. He's wanting to give his opinions on.
He's got opinions. Well, thank you so much for inviting us. We were really excited when you invited us to. Because we always wanted to do some Star Wars talk, but sometimes it's hard to do that in a completely different genre. So, and of course, just from us talking about Star Wars at church, so all those times, I remember when you said, I was like, this is going to be really, really fun. So we're really grateful, and we really appreciate it. And we look forward to any other stuff, even if it's just like a random episode about, I don't know.
I was going to say, if y'all do a Lord of the Rings episode, we're your guys.
Any sort of fandom, nerddom, anything like that, just let us know. We probably have an opinion when we probably watched it and we probably talked about it. But we would love to be on, because we really look forward to doing these, and we love talking to you guys, because we always learn something and enjoy it. I don't know if there's any new media that we're really into the older media, nerd media. There's some newer stuff. Everything's redone. Everything's rebooted these days. But we'll for sure find something for y'all to come back on for. I'll just kind of. We'll see what we got coming up soon, and just kind of look at maybe what subjects we think might fit with y'all, and I'll just I'll reach out and kind of float some ideas towards y'all, and y'all can kind of give me some feedback. But yeah, no, we'd definitely like to have y'all again sometime, and just keep the discussion going. So, but yeah, no, we really appreciate it, guys, and. For those that are following our channel, please give us a like, subscribe, comment, share these videos.
Let us know where you would rank all these. Yell at us in the comments, especially Andrew. But in all seriousness, thank you all that do support the channel. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you all for watching. We'll see y'all next time.
Thank you so much.
Bye.